I'm Zim, and this is the Helpful Photographer Podcast, in collaboration with New York City Photo Safari. To register for a safari, please visit newyorkcityphotosafari.com. Have you ever seen the numbers 999 or 9,999 on your camera, and it seems to be a permanent fixture? A lot of people can't figure out what this means or what's going on, but the answer is actually pretty simple. It's your frame count. All digital cameras tell you how much space, or rather, how many frames you have left on your memory card by counting down the number of frames you have available. The problem is that every camera has a maximum count it's capable of displaying, and it's usually 999 or 9,999. Now that memory cards are exceeding 64 gigabytes and people are using 128, 256, or even 512 gigabyte cards, it means that you can shoot more than 1,000 images even if you're shooting RAW, and well over 10,000 images when you're shooting JPEG, even if you're shooting a large JPEG. I'm going to explain a little bit further on this, but in the examples I'm about to use, I'm going to use some fairly round numbers, so please don't hold me to them, okay? So let's say you're shooting a large JPEG, which typically takes up about 3.6 megabytes of space. With a 128 gigabyte card in the camera, it means that you'll be able to shoot over 35,000 images. But your camera can only show 4 digits, which means until you get under 10,000 images, you'll only see the numbers 9999. In other words, you'll have to shoot 25,001 pictures before you'll see it go to 9,998. On the other hand, if your camera is only capable of showing 3 digits and not 4, it means that you'll have to shoot 34,001 images before you see a change. Now, let's say you're shooting an uncompressed RAW file in the new Sony 7R Mark IV. The files are about 60 megapixels, and they take up about 123 megabytes of space, so that's a pretty big file. In this case, you would only be able to shoot about 1,040 images on this 120 gigabyte card. And your camera would display that because it's well under the 9,999 threshold. As a reminder, I'm using approximate numbers here, right? It's just so you get the idea. By the way, 1,000 images in one intensive 8-hour day of shooting is a crap load of photos. Even for a pro shooter, that's a pretty rare event. So personally, I don't see the practicality of the mega-sized memory cards. Pretty much every camera I've seen lately can number images up to 9,999 before it starts over. So if you're actually shooting 35,000 images on one card, it means that you'll run out of numbers 3 times. So what happens when you run out of numbers? Well, as far as Canon cameras are concerned, it will create a new folder and start numbering at 1 again and put your next 9,999 images in that new folder. And I'm willing to assume that other manufacturers are going to do the same, or at least they'll have some sort of strategy for dealing with this. As you can see, even though your camera is only showing 9999, it's still numbering the images and calculating your space availability in the background. I would like to add that when I talked to my geeky husband about this, who deals with software engineers all the time, wanted to point out that the exact count depends on the software engineers who program the camera. It depends on whether they started counting at 0 or 1. And he felt that it would be remiss if I didn't point this out. So for anyone out there who's trying to make exact calculations, you may be off by 1 more or 1 less frame unless you know exactly how the engineers program the system. Last thought on this subject, before you stick a really big card in your camera, do check the manual to see if your camera can actually handle it. Yes, there is an upper size limit to what your camera can use. Oh, and one more thing, do check out the podcast numbers 5, 6, and 8 on memory cards. Until next time, definitely fill up those memory cards.